What's going on, gamers? It's Village here from Beneath the Veil, and welcome back to the channel. Today I wanted to go over all of the neutral creep abilities in the game. Today I'm just sticking with the regular neutral creeps. I'm not covering ancient creeps, but if that's something you'd like me to cover in a future video, please let me know in the comments below. But today I want to talk about this because in patch 7.31, which came out I believe earlier this year, Valve fundamentally reworked the way that all of the creeps work. So there were several neutral creeps that used to not have abilities that were now either granted completely new abilities or were granted abilities that used to belong to a stronger unit. As a consequence of this, it made summons heroes and heroes that dominate creeps much stronger because it inherently buffed the versatility and utility of not only heroes like Chen and Enchantress here, but also Doom, and then any hero that might like to pick up a Helm of the Dominator or Helm of the Overlord. So as we go through today's video, I'll leave up in the top right the prerequisites for Enchantress's Enchant, Chen's Holy Persuasion, and Doom's Devour, as to what level it needs to be in order to dominate each of these creeps, and we'll go up in progressively higher and higher creep levels. So without further ado, let's jump into it. First up we have the Wildwing here, and what the Wildwing has is the Tornado ability. So what this is it's a channeled ability where the Wildwing calls on the Spirit of the Wind, creating a sentient tornado that he can control. The tornado slows nearby enemies and does damage. It is invulnerable and can move anywhere. So the max channel duration is 15 seconds. It does hang around for a little bit of time after the channel ends. And what it does here, if I just call it in, so there we go, you can see here that the tornado's overpowering winds slow all nearby enemies, flinging debris at them and inflicting damage every second. Enemies close to the center of the tornado take more damage. So in a radius of 600 around it, it slows enemies by 15%, slows their attack by 15%, and then, let me just cast that again. So you can see here that it'll do a near attack radius of 150, near unit radius, sorry, is of 150, near damage is 45, and far damage is 15. So you can see Chen's taking instances of 2 at a time, and then if the tornado moves closer to him, then he's taking up to 8 now. So this is 8 per tick, but it does end up being, as it says there, 45 per second. Let me just run this back up just so you can see the numbers. So here you see that the near damage is 45 per second and the far damage is 15 per second. Keep in mind that is before any reductions. So as I move it here, you'll see it's doing several ticks of 8. This should actually be technically higher, but all heroes have a 25% magic damage reduction. So that is something to be wary of with all of these damage numbers, is that there is a inherent reduction at play. So what it says on the skill itself will not be the exact amount that's being transferred through. Alright, so that is the Wildwing. Let's bring in the Kobold next. All that they have is a prospecting aura. So this is a passive ability where Kobolds are adept at finding gold, increasing nearby allied heroes' GPM. So in a 1200 radius around the Kobold, it will increase the gold per minute of every hero in the aura by 20 gold per minute. So, you know, if you're playing a position 5, for example, and you get the prospecting aura and you just hide it in the trees, after 5 minutes, if you've kept the prospecting aura on you the whole time, that's another set of tangos or another self. So it's not a huge amount, but it's enough that, you know, if you pile it up, then it can make a little bit of a difference. You know, Kobold is not something that's typically picked up, but it's there nonetheless. Next up we have Kobold Soldier. And what this guy does is, before he goes and attacks like he wants to, so he has a steel weapon ability. So every third attack, the Kobold Soldier will disarm its target temporarily. Attack counter doesn't increase while ability is on cooldown. So after 3 attacks, he'll disarm them for 3 seconds, and then it will go on cooldown for 9 seconds. So as you see here, it goes 1, 2, 3, and Chen's disarmed. And then as soon as this comes off cooldown again, then we'll be able to do the same thing. So you see, I'll get a couple in there, and then it's not 1, 2, 3, disarmed again. So, you know, disarm is something that can be helpful in the early game. You know, you can if your enemy core is really onto it with last hits, sometimes just disarming them for a little bit right as there's about to be a creep within last hit area, you know, that can be a good way to make them lose it if you're struggling to beat them to the deny because they've got such high base attack damage. Something to consider, especially if you're playing against heroes like Huskar, for example, where, you know, just being able to stop him from attacking can really ease the pressure that he puts on the lane. But there are some other creeps as well that are really helpful for those sort of heroes too. And next we'll move on to the level 2 creeps. Who do I want to start with? I'll start with the Fell Spirit actually. So the Fell Spirit is part of the Ghost camps. Most people ignore this creep because the Ghost, when we'll get to it in the level 3 section, is much more powerful in general. But this is just really good to know that the Fell Spirit does have a Vex ability. And what that is, so it's a 3-second silence. So it is a single target, so you have to target a unit, and then it will silence them for 3 seconds. On a decent cast range as well. So if you see here, throw a little Ghost out, and then they're silenced. So really helpful if you're playing against heroes that are dependent on spamming spells in order to be effective in the lane. Otherwise, if there are really big channeled abilities, you need a way to stop from happening because heroes like Chen and Enchantress don't have inherent stuns. This can be something good to pick up as a, you know, something in the back pocket if your main core doesn't have a way to stop those channels as well. But yeah, that is the Fell Spirit. And then next up, let's go Harpy Scout. So the Harpy Scout, as I've covered in my Vision Masterclass, which if you haven't seen that, please go check it out. But the Harpy Scout has a takeoff ability. So what this is it's a toggled ability. So at the cost of 20 mana for the original activation, and then 4% max mana per second. The Harpy Scout is able to start flying, so she gains a flying speed, although her movement speed is reduced, and then you will see, so her move speed is halved, but when she activates it, she begins flying, and then she can either fly over trees, or most of the reason that you'd want this is just to scout. So if you're trying to siege towers, for example, and you want to spot TP rotations, then having one of these in the army can be quite good just to, you know, let it fly around, and the radius of its vision is actually quite large. Let's move over here. Okay, so I just spawned another Harpian. You'll see that as I stand right next to this Chen, you'll see that that fog is just starting to lift, and then you'll see that when I activate it, I'm basically getting that vision, but all around me. So I'll just wait for it to come off cooldown again. You can see this area up here that aren't being spotted by these creeps. Let me just move those out of the way. So you'll see now, when I activate it, I illuminate all of this area. So you do see in a really large radius around you during the daytime, which can be really helpful. But as you can see, it's really sapping my mana. So that's something to be aware of, is that it's not an always-on ability, but when you need it, it can be really clutch. That is the Harpy Scout. Next up, let's go on to the Kobold Foreman. So this is the boss of the Kobold camps. What he has is a speed aura. So the Kobold Foreman's cruel efficiency increases his movement speed and then movement speed of all nearby allies. So this grants a 12% move speed increase in a 1200 radius around him. This can be really effective with Chen, especially when you've got a creep army. I won't particularly get this for a Helm of the Dominator creep or Enchantress creep, just because there's generally better options for the utility of those heroes. But I mean, if you're playing something like Visage maybe, and you decide to get a Helm of the Dominator for extra push potential, then getting something like the Speed Aura from the Kobold Foreman could help your birds to stay on top of an enemy and just keep outputting damage. But yeah, it's something to think about if you don't need the utility of disables that other creeps offer. A speed aura increase can always be really, really good. Next up, we have the Centaur Conqueror. So most people don't actually realize the strength of this creep in particular because it's in the same creep camp as a Centaur Warrunner, which is just a really, really reliable stun. But the Centaur Conqueror here has a Cloak aura. So this creature protects its allies with a magic resistance aura. Creeps are better protected. So it's a magic resistance for heroes of 15%. And magic resistance for creeps of 30%. A cloak itself, right? This is literally what it's named after. Where is the cloak? There it is. So a cloak gives you 15% magic resist, right? This is a free cloak, which you can access on Chen and Enchantress from the moment you level up Holy Persuasion or Enchant. Or same thing with Doom. He can get this straight away as soon as he puts a point in Devour. The reason this is so strong is that it grants not only you, but also your ally and lane essentially a free cloak. So in magic damage heavy lanes, this can be a really, really clutch pickup, as well as if they're spamming abilities that do magic damage in just an AoE, then it helps harden up your creeps as well. So they get double the bonus that you would normally get. So really, really worth thinking about picking up in certain matches. There are some heroes that just love to spam spells, and that's where their damage comes from, and being able to mitigate it with something like this aura is really, really strong. Next up we have Satyr Banisher. And with the Satyr Banisher here, we have the Purge ability. So what this does is, for those who don't know, Purge is a basic dispel. So the Satyr Banisher knows every trick in the book, allowing him to dispel debuffs from allies or buffs from enemies. His trickery also slows the enemy's movement. So what this will do is, depending on who you cast it on, so if you cast it on an ally, so for example, if I've got Chen here, right? If you want to see if a spell is dispellable, you just hover over the spell, and then if you look in this first section here, you'll see in this instance, Penitence is dispellable because it's got dispellable yes. So what that means is that if you cast it on either this creep or an ally, you see right here, it just instantly dispels. So the debuff is there, and then I just instantly purge it. In a similar way, give me a Gabriel. So Shadow Word is dispellable. If he were to throw a Shadow Word on himself, I can then purge that. And you'll see here, it slows. It will only dispel once it's on him. It won't dispel if he tries to recast. Yeah. So yeah, typically I just use it for the dispel. I mainly use it on my allies, so I didn't actually realize that it provides a slow as well. That's good to know. That is quite a considerable slow as well. 300 down to 150, and then it slowly starts reverting. So yeah, so it's initially a 50% movement speed slow, and then it eases over time. But yeah, mainly the reason I use this is I literally just hide it in trees, and then I wait until an enemy uses something on my core that can be dispelled, and then I pop him out, dispel it, and then run away. That's the way to play with this creep. He's so weak that any support that's worth their salt will immediately target it, because dispels are just super, super strong. But yeah, that is the Satyr Banisher. And let's move on to the Hill Troll Berserker. So the Hill Troll Berserker, they were given the ability in 7.31 to provide a break. So it's on a 10-second cooldown, but whenever the Hill Troll Berserker attacks a unit, the first time while this ability is able to be procced, it will proc a 3-second break. As we can see here, let's bring our Chen back out. First attack will break, and then it will go on cooldown here. And what breaks do, for those who are not aware of the mechanic, it will temporarily turn off or fully negate all passive abilities of heroes. Lots of really good passive abilities worth turning off. So again, if you're ever sure whether this is a good pickup, just come in here and have a look through. So it would turn off Divine Favor on Chen as well. See here, if I click him, then gaining 0 health regen and increasing armor by 0. And then once he's come off the break condition, then he's got that back. So yeah, just really good to consider with enemies that rely on passive abilities to be effective. This can be a semi-reliable way to turn it off. It is just worth knowing that it's only applicable on the first break, so it can be a little bit difficult to coordinate. I would like it if this was based on a spell itself so you can control when the break happens, but maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't, who knows. But anyway, moving along. Next, let's go the Ogre Bruiser. So the Ogre Bruiser is in Ogre camps along with the Ogre Frostmage. So there's normally 2 of these in the camp, and as many of you who have tried to jungle and been stunned know, the Ogre Bruiser has Ogre Smash. So what this is a 3-second stun. So Ogre slowly charges a big attack, stunning for 3 seconds and dealing 200 plus 8% of their current HP as damage to all units in front of him. So this is a magic damage stun, so it is worth knowing that those numbers are based on, before mitigations of magic resist. But as you can see here, it is a very large OE. But you can see here, so you'll charge it up and then let the stun go. And that's a 3-second stun. Like, keep in mind, a line strike array at full level is 2.5. So this is one of the longest stuns in the game, which is why it's tied to such a unreliable mechanic. Like, it's very easy to dodge it. But if you have other setups, other stuns or slows, or if you can catch somebody coming up to the high ground, for example, and they don't realize that this is about to happen, then you can end up getting a reasonably large stun off. And I have seen players that will have multiple Ogre Bruisers chained up, and they will get like a 5 or 6 second stun by overlaying the stun. So that's something to practice if you want to get into Chen spamming, for example. But otherwise, just a decent early game stun to provide a bit of damage, provide some wave clear, all that sort of stuff. Carrying on, let's go to the Hill Troll Priest. And the Hill Troll Priest is a really, really strong level 2 creep for 2 reasons. So the first one is the heal amplification aura. So it provides bonus heal amp to all nearby allies, and it buffs the heals by 15%. So really, really strong if you've got a heal-based team with multiple heals. So if you've got a Witch Doctor, for example, with Voodoo Restoration, that will increase the impact of his aura. Otherwise, obviously, if you're playing Chen and Enchantress, they both have inherent heals. Yeah, any hero that likes to provide heals, Warlock as well, which is Shadow Word. This can actually be super, super broken if Warlock gets a shard, and you can just put one of these on a move command behind him. And then anytime he casts his Shadow Word in an AoE, you will be buffing up the heal that's applying to the creep wave by 15%. So yeah, really, really strong. Otherwise, he does have this heal ability here, which will restore 100. It says 100 health here, but keep in mind, he gets a 15% heal amp. So this will actually be 115 damage that it will restore. So if I get this Chen to attack my Chen, do a bit of damage there, and then you'll see, let's just stop him for a moment. Bang, 115. Oh, he's got it on autocast, so he's got on free spells rather. This is autocastable, so you can either just right click to turn it on, or hot tip, if you hold Alt and then press the hotkey, that should normally put it on autocast. But this time it just healed. Okay, good to know. And what this will do is it will wait until it's back off, and then he will like carry on right clicking, right? And then the second somebody can be healed, he'll go and heal and then go back to attacking while this is on cooldown. And then the moment that this comes off cooldown, you'll see that his first priority is to cast a spell again. So yeah, that can be a decent way as just a means of setting and forgetting. Otherwise, just really strong, especially for this heal amp aura. Especially if you get items like Mech, which Chen likes to get. If you get things like Holy Locket, which boosts your heal amp even further. So Holy Locket, there he is. So provides a passive Holy Blessing, amplifies heals you provide by 30%, as well as grants 3 HP regen to allies. So if you dominate this creep along with Holy Locket, then your heal potential really starts to skyrocket. And then the last of the level 2 creeps is the Vhoul Assassin. What he has is Envenomed Weapon. So what Envenomed Weapon does is it's a passive ability. The Vhoul Assassin has soaked his weapons in his own blend of painful predator venoms that causes his enemies' natural regeneration to work against themselves. Heroes recover from the poison more quickly. So this duration on creeps is 20 seconds, a hero duration is 2 seconds, and the regen reduction is 75. It's actually 75%, so you'll see here, if I look at the Chen, he's got 13.9 HP regen. If you look down here, if this starts attacking him, you'll see that it's constantly refreshing every time the attack procs, and you'll see that now it's being reduced to plus 3.5. So if we do a bit of math there, if we take 13.9, and then the way I do it is, so the alternate of 75% is 25%, right? So if you want to figure out what he's left with, you take his initial number and then you multiply it by 0.25. And in this instance, you'll find that it gives you that exact number there, which is 3.5. So this creep in particular is really strong against heroes who rely on high HP regen to survive in lane. So you're talking like your Bristlebacks. Timbersaw can be a bit hit and miss because of the passive that he's got. So teaming up the Vhoul Assassin with the Hill Troll Berserker for the break to stop him gaining armor charges, and then turning off his HP regen. This can be a really effective way to try and harass him out of lane. Generally, Timber is a hero that will just sit in lane no matter what. But yeah, Vhoul Assassin really, really strong against Huskar as well because he relies on his HP regen to survive. Yeah, lots of heroes. As you start to play the game more and more, you'll get a feel for heroes that rely on HP regen, and this can be a nice little way with a relatively, early game creep that you can pick up from level 1 if you really want to. Could be a really nice way just to turn those abilities off. Okay, so moving on to level 3 creeps. So these are the strongest creeps that you can get with the first level in either Holy Persuasion from Chen, Enchant from Enchantress, or Devour from Doom. So let's start with the Giant Wolf. So the Giant Wolf, what they have is a ability called Intimidate, and what this does is the Giant Wolf's ferocious roar reduces all nearby enemies' total attack damage. So in a radius of 300 around the Giant Wolf, when you activate it, it will reduce total attack damage by 50% for 4 seconds. So as you can see here, if this Chen starts attacking, you see he's got 157 attack damage. If I pop that, you'll see it's minusing 78, which is half of 157. So it's just really worth keeping in mind is that if your enemies are reliant on right-click damage to be effective, then this can just be a nice way to mitigate some of that damage. It does require being in a 300 AoE around this, so it is worth, learning what those ranges are. You see that 300 is about that. So it can be a little bit touch and go on ranged units, just because you do have to get the creep, within range to be able to proc that spell. Generally much better on melee heroes because you can get them right up next to them and then proc it before they start doing any damage. Yeah, much harder against ranged heroes, but that's just worth knowing. But yeah, generally any sort of attack damage reduction is always a really, really strong spell. But as you'll see, there are some other really strong abilities here. Let's start with the... Actually, before we do that, let's go Ogre Frostmage. I'll leave the 3 strongest for last. So with the Ogre Frostmage, this is still a really, really strong ability. So what the Ogre Frostmage does is he provides ice armor. So the Ogre Frostmage summons an invisible layer of icy air that surrounds the target friendly unit, increasing its armor and temporarily slowing any enemies that dare attack it. So it provides 5 bonus armor to the ally that you cast it on. It's a duration of 45 seconds with a 5-second cooldown. Super, super spammable, especially for only being 40 mana. And then if you look at these last 3 bits here, so there's a move speed slow of 25%, an attack speed slow of 25, and then a slow duration of 5 seconds. So this relies on the enemy actually attacking whatever unit it is that has this ice armor on it. So you see, if I cast it on the Chen, then he's got the little buff, so he's got some extra armor. But you'll see that it won't be until Chen actually attacks that the ice armor slow procs. So you see it refreshes again. So this is just a really good way to discourage your enemies from attacking certain targets or punishing them if they do. And again, ridiculously long duration. So, you can spam it on both of your heroes as well as a bunch of creeps if you really want to be cancerous about it. And if you got the mana regen for it as well. But yeah, you can just always keep this up. Really, really strong spell, especially for the fact that you can pick it up, once you've put a single point into any of those domination abilities. But yeah, that's the Ogre Frostmage. And then let's get into these 3. So I got the Hill Troll, which is part of the troll camps. There's normally 2 of these along with the Dark Troll Summoner, which we'll get to later. What the Hill Troll does is they have the Ensnare ability. So the Dark Troll Summoner tosses netting around the enemy's feet, briefly immobilizing the unit, though the unit can still attack and use abilities. So this is a 1.75 second root. So this is basically a 75% effective Rod of Atos. So you see there, you just toss it. Really, really ridiculously strong if you're playing with especially a Skywrath Mage. Picking up one of these early, as soon as he gets level 6, you can just end up expediting his farm, because the way that Skywrath Mage generally snowballs is that he gets lots and lots of kills, and then he gets Atos, and then he just continues to dominate. So yeah, if you can pick up 1 or 2 of these Hill Trolls, and then you can start doing things like chaining them together, right? Then that can be really, really strong. You can end up getting a 3-second root really easily, as early as level 3. So that's, even longer than an Atos. Just negating movement is really strong, especially, a root, for those who aren't aware. If somebody's trying to TP, you can just cancel that, because root stops all movement. I think even things like... I don't think you can force stuff yourself out of a root. Let's get this back up. Oh, you still can, but you're still rooted. There you go. I learned something new about the root mechanic. Generally, if somebody's trying to escape and you don't have a stun around, then just throwing one of these out can be really, really strong. Yeah, really, really valuable creep in the, early game, but really at all stages of the game. Moving on, we have the Harpy Stormcrafter, the second strongest early game creep, in my opinion. If you disagree, please let me know in the comments below. With Chain Lightning. So what this is effectively it's like Zeus's lightning bolt. So the Harpy Stormcrafter releases a high voltage bolt of electricity at the target enemy, dealing damage. The bolt jumps to other nearby enemies, losing power with each jump. So the initial damage is 140, and then within 500 range it will continue to jump. Each time it jumps, whatever damage number it did last, it will take 25% off of that. So you see here, generally I only ever get the first proc off, but you'll see those damage numbers as they jump. So 105, 78. Keep in mind, these are still providing a magic resist of 25%. So you'll see that this number here, although it's meant to be 140, once you take 25% off, then those numbers are all lining up. So you're doing, to most heroes early game, 105 damage. Again, on a 4-second cooldown for 50 mana. So you can really start to, harass somebody really effectively with this. They've typically only got something like max 800 health early game. So if you have one of these around and you're just constantly throwing it out, then you can, an eighth to a quarter of their health really, really quickly. And that damage can really pile up considering how spammable this is. That is the Harpy Stormcrafter. And then what is, in my opinion, the strongest creep early game is the Ghost, found in Ghost Camps along with the Fell Spirit. Reason for that is that this frost attack here. So the Ghost launches an area attack that chills her enemies to their bones. This provides a 25% movement speed slow and a 25 attack speed slow with a duration of 1.5 seconds. As you'll see here, it is just incredibly strong at slowing enemies and giving the Ghost the ability to chase them down. So this is just a great ability to use to bully people out of lane, especially if you combine it with a Chen or Enchantress slow. Let's go slow you, and then 137, you can see that he's being slowed right down to 100 move speed before the enchant comes off. Similarly, if I do the same thing with Chen, cast Penitence, you'll see that he's being slowed down to 118. So not quite as slow as Enchantress, but still, that's basically a crawl at that point. So yeah, this creep is just incredibly, incredibly strong. Really good at zoning the enemy support, because it just punishes them for being around, and it makes them either try and have to man fight the creep or back off and just be punished. But also really, really strong at slowing down the enemy core. Say, for example, you're playing position 5 and the enemy core is trying to harass your hard carry. Throwing the Ghost on them can be a decent way to stop some of that, just because it does slow down the amount of damage output that they're doing through the attack speed slow. And otherwise just a really good way to try and put some kill threat on the enemy team. That is the Ghost. And now let's move along to the level 4 creeps. So as you will see as I update the UI through the editing team, these do require 2 levels from Chen, or Enchantress and Doom still get access to these guys early on. Let's start with the Satyr Mindstealer. Whenever I'm playing Doom, I love to find a Satyr Mindstealer early, just because, mainly for this Mana Aura here. So the Mana Aura provides bonus Mana Regeneration to all nearby allies, and the Mana Regen's 1.75. The reason this is so strong is that if we look at a Ring of Basilius, right, this is normally something that a support will like to pick up early game, not only for its buildability into other items, but it gives 0.5 mana regen to whoever has it in their inventory, and then grants 1 mana regeneration to all allies in, surprise surprise, 1200 radius. So this is actually a stronger version of Ring of Basilius in the same radius. So this is 1.75 instead of just 1. Even somebody holding a Ring of Basilius, you will still out mana regen them just by having this in your army. And then the other reason this guy's really strong is the mana burn. So for 50 mana, the Satyr Mindstealer removes a fragment of his enemy's soul, burning away mana equal to 20 plus 2 times the target's intelligence, and dealing damage equal to the amount of mana burned. So this is just really strong against heroes that like to spam spells in lane to be effective. You're talking about like your silencers, your Skywrath mages, just those really, really toxic supports who just do a ton of magic damage early on. A mana burn can be really good just to keep them under control. So same way that, with Lion, you want to try and use his mana drain off cooldown as often as you can, because the less spells the enemies have, the less damage your core is going to take. So this can really, really be worth having. And the fact that it's only 50 mana, plus the fact that he's got 1.75 mana regen, by the time he's got that off cooldown. Yeah, I mean, you've regened like 30 of the 50 mana it took by the time the spell's off cooldown. So you're really only losing 20 mana each time you cast it off cooldown. So, if you do the math on that, from 600 mana minus 20 each time you cast it, you could basically chain cast it 30 times before you'd be completely depleted of mana, just from the mana regen aura. So really, really strong creep. I would always pick this up whenever I'm playing Doom in the early game. But yeah, picking him up if you've got a core that likes to spam spells as well. Saying you're playing position 4 with a position 3 Visage, then you can spam Grave Chill and Soul Assumption. Really, really strong if you've got a ally that likes to spam spells as well. Next up, we have... should we do the Hellbear next? No, let's do the Mud Golem first, because there's an interesting interaction with the Hellbear that I want to show last for this group. So with the Mud Golem, you got two things here. So you got Shard Split. On death, Mud Golem shattered into 2 Shard Golems. Shard Golems have 240 health, deal 9 damage per attack, and live for 60 seconds. And then you've got this Hurl Boulder ability. So he hurls a boulder at the target, damaging and stunning them. So damage to heroes is 75. This is before reductions again. Damage to creeps is 150. And the stun duration is 0.6 seconds. It's on a 30-second cooldown, costs no mana. I just need to do a quick thing because I'm in a hero demo. Technically spawn these in as an NPC unit, so to get full control over the Shard Split, I just need to dominate him with Chen and then steal him back with my Chen. And then this should work all completely fine. That's just a little workaround for those who are trying to demo this stuff themselves. I will leave in the description the shorthand to spawn all of these in. But yeah, something to be aware of when you're doing it this way is that if you create any summoned units, it'll have to be the same thing for the Dark Troll Summoner. Any summoned units, you won't actually have control of them unless you dominate them, then dominate them back. But with Hurl Boulder, so chuck it, stuns for 0.6 seconds. Then let's just quickly kill them off. Okay, so as you see here, I've now got 2 golems that have the same ability. So this is generally a creep that you don't mind dying the first time, and then you're obviously on a timer for how much longer they're going to stay around. But yeah, really, really strong creep just for... 1, the first stun, just as a mini stun, but then if it's died already and you've got the 2 to play with, then you can chain the 2 stuns together, and that'll give you 1.2 seconds if you chain it perfectly. But yeah, Mud Golem, really strong. And then with the Hellbear here, hang on, so what this does, so it provides 2 auras. The first one is a Swiftness aura, so the fearsome Hellbear attacks more quickly and bullies nearby allies into following suit. So he provides a 15 attack speed increase in a 1200 radius. So for anybody who loves to right click, this is a really, really great creep to have around just because it makes them right click quicker. But this ability here, Death Row Rush. So when the Hellbear dies, all nearby allies go into a frenzy, gaining attack speed for a short amount of time. So for 5 seconds, nearby allies in a 700 radius around him when he dies, gain 100 attack speed. So that can be just really, really strong in team fights. But the one caveat to this ability is that it does require the Hellbear to die. Now, that wording is a little bit misleading. So most people will think that it relies on the Hellbear being last hit, right? Which would give the enemy a bounty for killing him, which is, you know, players would understandably be like, well, I don't want to do that because that gives them more gold, you know, because we might not be able to convert the kill. That's very true, but there are a few workarounds. So, the easiest workaround is if you're playing Enchantress or any hero that likes to have a Helm of the Dominator, what you would do is you would enchant the creep, and then the second you want him to quote-unquote die, you simply just enchant another creep. So if there's a fight happening around a creep wave, just enchant one of the enemy creeps, and then the Hellbear will die, and then the Death Row will be activated. Otherwise, if you have Chen, you can do a similar thing where if you've got the... It's a little bit harder with Holy Persuasion in its base skill because it will kill off the earliest creep that you dominated. So you'd need to, you know, if you've got it at max level, you will need to have dominated 3 other creeps after you've dominated the Hellbear. Then you need to dominate a new creep to trigger the death. The more reliable way is to get a Scepter on Chen. And then what I can do here is that if I, so let's say I've got the Enchantress attacking, then if I trigger the Martyrdom, it will increase attack speed here. And funnily enough, the reason it's called Potato Revenge is because the Hellbear is lovingly known in the community as a potato. I gather that's been in for a long time, but I've never actually, I didn't realize until I was doing research for this video that they actually named the buff that as well. But yeah, so Death Row, really, really strong. We'll see with the Hellbear Smasher when we get to him as well that he's got a similar sort of ability, but that's worth keeping in mind when you play these summons heroes, that there are ways of forcing those on-death abilities that, you know, I've got many, many hours in this game and I'd never actually realized that there were reliable ways to force that through. So yeah, either just dominate another creep with Enchantress, dominate another creep with the Helm of the Dominator, or yeah, use Scepter, or if you're really good at your Holy Persuasion management, just dominate 3 other creeps and then, you know, trigger it at the right time. Let's move on to our level 5 creeps. Who do I want to start with? I'll start with the Alpha Wolf. So with the Alpha Wolf, he provides critical strike. So the cruel Alpha Wolf attacks his enemies' unprotected vitals at every opportunity, inflicting critical damage. This is only on the Alpha Wolf itself, so this is a really good pickup when you're playing Doom, because Doom does consume the abilities of the creeps that he takes over, even if they are abilities that only affect the creep. So Doom can actually give himself a 20% chance to crit for double damage. But otherwise, the really strong thing for Summons Heroes as well is that you get Pack Leader's Aura. So the Alpha Wolf's ruthless attacks do extra damage. His commanding presence inspires nearby allies to attack ruthlessly as well. So all allies in a 1200 radius get 30% bonus damage. So that is all sources of damage. That is not just your base damage, it's also your additional damage number here. So if you look, it's 24 plus 46 in this instance. 24 is your base attack, and then 46 is your damage. And that is what calculates your full damage output. So this will do all of it. The reason I'm covering that now is because there's another creep that we're going to cover very soon, where it matters what type of damage your heroes have. But yeah, this is just a really good all-around damage increase. Not much more to say on the Alpha Wolf, just really strong when you need that overall damage output increase. Next up, let's go Warpine Raider. So the Warpine Raider has a Seed Shot. So it's very similar to Hoodwink's Acon Shot, but slightly different. So with the Seed Shot, it is a unit target, as per usual. So it hugs the seed at a target, slowing and damaging it. The seed can bounce multiple times to nearby targets. So it does 100 damage before reductions. It can bounce 4 times in a range of 500. It slows by 100% for a 1 second duration. So it's like a mini slow. This, when I was initially doing research for it, is a little bit misleading because it says it pierces spell immunity. However, the effects will not go through. So the reason that it pierces spell immunity is for the benefit of bouncing and affecting non-spell immune enemies rather. So that's something to be aware of, is that you won't get the benefit of the slow or the damage to BKB'd enemies, but it will still proc bounces. So if you've got one enemy that's BKB'd and one that's not, and you want to kill the one that's not BKB'd, this can be a good way to continue to slow them, even though the slow won't affect the other target. As we'll see here, I'll just demonstrate with these two heroes, just run them back and forth. So I'm just holding shift to give multiple move commands, and then a Hawk Seed, and you see they both get slowed considerably. I did wonder when I was researching this if that slow percentage is correct, or whether it's like it slows it by 100. What do you got? 305. Yeah, so it slows it to 100, which is a little bit misleading. It slows them down to 100 move speed. But yeah, decent ability. The main reason I pick up Warpine Raiders is normally just because they're in a hard camp, so I'll typically pick them up just to push down lanes because they've got decent damage. That is the Warpine Raider. And then let's go, who do I want to do next? Let's do the Centaur Conqueror. Centaur Conqueror has the most reliable stun in the game, which is Wall Stomp, most reliable for a neutral creep. So Centaur Conqueror's powerful hooves stomp the ground, stunning and damaging nearby enemies. Heroes recover more quickly. So in a 250 radius around the Centaur, stuns for 3 seconds on creeps or 2 seconds on heroes and deals 25 damage. So you'll see here, it is actually a decently large radius. I typically pick this guy up a lot if I'm playing Beastmaster. He's one of the creeps that I most like to dominate because you do like your Primal Roar, and then it boosts the movement speed of all creep units that you've got, and then you can really, really easily chain stuns with the Centaur. That's worth mentioning, is that if you get used to the cast point of this spell, you can really start to chain multiple of these together. If you've got like Chen, for example, or if you've got multiple heroes that are all dominating this sort of creep, then it's really good. You can also animation cancel, and it won't put it on cooldown. So if you decide that you're not quite close enough to get the stun off, then you can always just cancel it and keep moving. Otherwise, yeah, doing things like body blocking and threatening stuns, really strong. Lots and lots of fun that you can have with this. It's considered one of the strongest creeps in the entire game, for good reason, because stuns are the most powerful form of crowd control in the game. Next up, we got the Wildwing Ripper. So this does have a passive, which most people don't really recognize because his active ability is just so strong. But with the Toughness aura, so the Wildwing Ripper's Fury numbs it to attacks and inspires nearby allies to withstand more blows. So this provides a +3 armor boost in 1200 radius. The reason this is really strong is that armor, for those who aren't aware, is either gained through purchasing armor items, which give you armor points, or for every 6 agility points that a hero has, it grants them 1 armor point. And there are associated reductions with armor that I won't go into because holistically this channel tries to avoid going into the numbers too much and just instead getting people to understand general concepts. But when a hero doesn't have much armor protection, then giving them 1 or 2 or 3 points of armor is really, really strong. And then armor provides diminishing returns. So typically if you're playing with a hero that is an agility based carry, the armor won't really matter because they'll have natural agility gain that will grant them armor. But if you've got a strength or intelligence based carry who doesn't naturally build armor items, then stacking armor auras can be really strong to toughen them up so that they don't take as much damage from right clicks. If you've got Silencer, Leshrac, Sven, that's why Sven has a skill that grants him armor, because armor is inherently really, really strong early on. So that's something to be aware of, is just the Toughness aura granting bonus armor. But the real reason to get the Wildwing Ripper at all stages of the game is for the Hurricane ability. As I covered in my Vision Masterclass, which I did for the channel, Hurricane can be cast on anybody. So you can cast it on the creep itself, you can cast it on your own hero, you can use it to cliff yourself, you can use it to push yourself or enemies off cliffs. As you see here, let's just throw it on the Chen. Oh, there we go. So I can force him off. Just really, really strong as a means to disengage, to engage. Forced movement is just really, really strong. And this is vector-based as opposed to Force Staff, which requires, it pushes the hero in the direction that they're facing, or the creep in the direction that they're facing. This is vector-based, so you can actually choose where it goes, which is way, way stronger than any other forced movement ability in the game. Because, it's simply a point and then which way do you want it to go, and then release. Doesn't rely, like with Meat Hook, there's a hit mechanic that you have to hit the hook. With all of this, it's literally like, no, I can see you, I cast it on you, you go this way, thank you. Things that I really like to do with Wildwing Ripper, besides just the general movement, is either push enemies into us. So say if I've got a creep army as Chen, I will use the Wildwing Ripper to force a really fragile enemy into my creep army, and then I'll normally, just surround them and start attacking them, or I'll use one of my creeps to continue to body block while the rest of them just pile on damage. Lots of really, really strong ways that you can use that, even as a way to potentially save an ally. So say if the Enchantress was being chased and then I just wanted, they were outnumbered, and I can just quickly force them off a ledge so that they're now disengaged, they can continue to run. I haven't put a hero in danger by trying to pull that maneuver off, whereas using a Force Staff, you've got to be within range to cast the Force Staff. Hurricane, really, really strong at all stages of the game. But yeah, also just good to know in the early game that Toughness aura can help in those sort of situations as well. And then next up we have the Hellbear Smasher. So the Hellbear Smasher has an active, as opposed to the Hellbear, which has got a passive. The Hellbear Smasher claps his massive hands together, creating a deafening blast. The blast damages nearby enemies and throws them off their footing. So in a 300 radius around the Hellbear, when he does the thunderclap, he provides a 25% movement speed slow, a 25 attack speed slow, and 150 damage. And the slows last for 3 seconds. So that is just good to know as a general output thing early game as well. 150 even after reductions. It's still over 100 damage. So decent to throw out. The attack speed slow and move slow can be really good as well, especially with Chen and Enchantress, who both have slows. And then as we covered already with the original Hellbear, with the Hellbear Smasher, he has a death row power. Just when the Hellbear Smasher dies, all nearby allies go into a rampage, gaining a bonus attack damage for a short amount of time. So this is the important caveat that I talked about earlier. So with the Hellbear Smasher, they have a base attack damage bonus of 50%. As we covered, the number on the left is your base damage, and then the number on the right is your damage increase. Any hero that likes to stack their primary stat for damage, this is really, really strong on. So your Naga Sirens, Drow Ranger, even Medusa stacks a lot of agility, even though she does like to stack. You know, I mean, primarily any hero that likes to build items like Skadi, or that likes to be illusion based, will generally like having this in the army. Or just at their disposal, because they will typically get items that will inherently boost their base damage. As opposed to heroes like Sniper, he tends to build more damage items most of the time, so it's not as effective. And also most of the time he's outside of the radius when the creep dies, because it is a 700 radius, which, you know, if you think about, you're up here causing it to proc, and then the sniper's all the way back here, he's not going to get the benefit. That's always worth thinking of, is what heroes benefit from base attack damage, and then again you can force that behavior the same way. So if we dominate and then dominate back, then I can, let's just put him in here attacking, and then bang, and then same there. So Tomato Revenge, much like the regular Hellbear, the Hellbear Smasher is also affectionately known as Tomato. So there you go, there's a little bit of fun in-game lore. Okay, and now for the last of the regular creeps. So there's technically 3 creeps in here to cover, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So the Satyr Tormentor, so level 6 creep, he has Shockwave, which is a unit or point target, deals magic damage. It's on an 8-second cooldown, costs 100 mana. The Satyr Tormentor tears open an unstable rift into the underworld, creating a shockwave that travels in a line along the ground, dealing damage to enemies it hits. The travel distance is 1380, and it does damage of 160. An important thing to note is that with this ability, the cast range is smaller than the spell travel range. So you'll see, if I overlay the cast range over those heroes, you'll see that the projectile will, you know, I can cast a projectile on them, right? But since this is a unit or point target, I can also target it on the ground. So what I can do, right, is I can stand back here. So you see they're outside of my cast range, but when I cast it, the projectile still goes and hits them. So that is worth knowing, is that not all cast range is indicative of the spell range. And if that's something that you'd like me to go over in another video, please let us know in the comments below. The team and I are always building a pile of video ideas, but anything that's suggested by the community that we're building will instantly go to the top. So we do have some things from viewers in the past, like rotations for cores, and I think we'll also do for supports as well, ways to boost your GPM, and then also more hero-specific mechanics and replays, which we're trying to figure out the format for what we like. But yeah, if this is something that you'd like to know as well about heroes that have spells that go further than their cast range, please let us know, because there are a few heroes in a similar sort of vein that a lot of the mechanics overlap, but you just need the awareness of knowing which spells will do what, so that when you play those heroes, it can be a bit more effective. But yeah, that's Shockwave, and then the Satyr Tormentor also has Unholy Aura. So the Satyr Tormentor's Demonic Communion allows him to emanate regenerative power, increasing the health regen of himself and all nearby allies. So this increases health regen by 5. So this is really, really strong with a hero like Enchantress, who has Untouchable. So she's super, super slow to right-click down, and what mainly gets her is burst, right? So if you've got ways to boost up effectiveness of Nature's Lieutenants, which does heals per second, and then also boost up her base heal, like her health regen, then she gets really, really strong. Similarly, Chen has Divine Favor, which will give him and all allies a regen per second of 4 at max level. So when you pick up this creep as well, that gets boosted up, 5 plus 4 is 9. So you're giving them an extra 9 regen in lane. Then if you were to pick up things like a Headdress, you grant an extra 2 HP regen, so you see that it really, really starts stacking up. So you're getting up to like 11 HP regen. That's up around what Tranquil Boots will give you when it's off cooldown. So there are ways, depending on what your cores need, that you can start itemizing with not only the items that you have, but also the heroes that you dominate when you play these heroes, as to how to be super effective and just give them the sustain that they need. That's the Satyr Tormentor. And then last on our list for today, and again, please let me know in the comments if you'd like us to go over ancient creep abilities, we have the Dark Troll Summoner. So the Dark Troll Summoner stirs the ground underfoot, raising the remains of trolls long dead, bringing to life 3 skeleton warriors who will fight at his side. So important things to note here. It has a duration of 35 seconds, but a cooldown of 20, and then a mana cost of 50. So the reason that the duration and the cooldown being different is important, because it means that you can have multiple summons from one creep active at a time. The reason that this is so strong is that if we summon some creeps here, you will see that, and as you see here, I can't actually control these because I forgot to do the dominate and then redominate. Dominate, redominate, there we go. So these skeletons here, they have a rally ability. So the skeleton's allies gain bonus attack damage. This aura stacks. So each skeleton that you have up will grant 3 bonus damage in a 1200 radius. This applies to not only heroes, not only to the other skeletons, but also to creep waves. The Dark Troll Summoner is the strongest creep to have if you're looking to play the sort of lane push game. I always pick one of these up if I've got a Beastmaster, you know, when I'm doing those push strats, because with the additional cast of rally. So you see that these skeletons, right? So they got plus 57. Let's cast another instance. Then they go plus 66. And that will just keep stacking. So that's really worth knowing, is that if you think about each one is giving an additional 3 damage. Each time you cast it, you're giving 9 extra damage. If you got multiple of these, you know, it can be, you can do plus 18 damage if you got 2. You can do plus 27 damage if you got 3. All casting at the same time. So yeah, just really, really strong for overall damage. And again, that bounces to all creeps in the lane as well. So if we go and join the creep wave, you can see that my catapult's getting extra damage. You know, the archers are getting extra damage. And then just boost that even more. So now they're getting plus 12. So really, really strong when you're looking to push lanes. But yeah, that is everything for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments below anything you'd like us to cover, like those the spell range versus cast range difference, or ancient creep abilities as well. And yeah, besides that, I'll see you in the next video.